knowledge, community engagements, as well as community beneficiation within the context of the Nagoya Protocol on access and benefit sharing. Thank you.
So you may go on to your presentation. Thanks.
As I have said, I don't have a formal presentation. I think I have just presented about what SunBio is about. So I can repeat, SunBio is a Southern African network for biosciences, right? Operate within the SADC region comprising of 16 countries. And one of our roles is to provide a platform where researchers, private sector companies, including SMMEs, local and indigenous communities, as well as the policy makers to engage on issues of biosciences with the intention to come up with solutions to food and health. So indigenous knowledge systems is one of our area of interest, especially from the science and technology development perspective and innovation.
Okay, thank you very much, Sechaba, for that. So our interest in this platform as well, we would like to find out from you, but you don't have to respond now. So I'm going to ask you to think about, or just to let us know as far as your role as SunBio is concerned, and since COVID pandemic has happened, what have been the emerging topics or proposed solution within the SADC itself or the Southern Africa itself to respond to the COVID? I mean, like Madagascar itself, they have come up with a artemisia, which is now under the debate in terms of, is it clinically acceptable? But then, I mean, like, it might not only be from a medicinal point of perspective, but then it might be other perspectives that may have arose within the Southern Africa that may be of interest to our audience. So that is something that I'd like you to think about. So I'm going to now move on to Selekanye Seribe. Selekanye, I'm also going to allow you just about 30 seconds of introduction, and then you can move on to your presentation. Thank you.
Very much for the invitation. I hope you can all hear me. My name is Selekanye Seribe, the founder and the CEO of Peoya Africa Agri-Digital Institute. We are based in Tabasioni village in the northwest here in South Africa. So we are solving the problem of lack of formalized indigenous medicinal institution by researching, cultivating, harvesting, processing, conserving, and training of botanical and culinary herbs for commercial use in Africa. So our services are around research, monitoring and evaluation of IKS trainings, as well as the laboratories that we're going to be establishing. Our laboratories do not conform to the formalized scientific labs, as we believe that already by owning a Ndumba as a traditional healer, that's your laboratory, and we are having a specialized way or format on how we can be able to build a capacity amongst our traditional health practitioners in Africa.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm sure that is going to be of much interest, given that, you know, most of the time we want formalized spaces, or we prefer to, not necessarily prefer, but then that has become a dominating way of thinking when we come to monitoring and evaluation, and also understanding how do we end up saying a particular product has been formalized and so on. So I'm going to open up to our participants. So Senzo, if you are able to assist us there with questions from the participants. So I'm going to give us about 3 minutes to attend, or 3 to 5 minutes to attend to questions that may be raised from the participants. So, I mean, like one of the questions to Derek is that monopoly is through patent registration. Exclusion of indigenous herbs is due to it being registered. Sanbia can facilitate. Let me see. Sanbia, is that so that is something to do with the monopoly. So the feeling is that there's monopoly throughout this whole industry of indigenization or indigenous knowledge, which ends up losing out a lot from being in the mainstream or competing with the typical formal industries, what we deem as formal industries. Since SANBIO is able to facilitate, or SANBIO is interested in that, is it possible for SANBIO to facilitate making sure that there is no monopoly of the industry or patent registration?
For us as SANBIO, as I've said during the introduction, we provide an opportunity for networking, not a competition. Would like to see communities, researchers, and private sector companies collaborating on specific projects of mutual benefit, but not a competition or collaboration can start, right? So communities will be bound to disclose their confidential information with respect to the plant that they use to treat a specific disease. Researchers will need to reveal all their process technologies on how they do research on plant species. Business also on their business processes. So that is an intellectual property that I'm referring to. And then that is the background. And then another one that will be generated jointly by these collaborators during the course of the project, for instance, is the joint IP. How is that going to be managed and shared? And that is mainly governed by the Nagoya Protocol, right? Of which most SADC countries have ratified to it, to say if the local and indigenous communities are going to be working with business and researchers, and they will be bound to reveal their intellectual property, there is a certain legal framework that needs to be in place, right, to protect the interests of the communities. Mainly, the legal framework I'm referring to is prior informed consent, right, to ensure that communities are part of the collaboration. They are not just mainly contributing with their knowledge, and then you let the researchers to operate at arm's length from the communities, right? Another agreement that needs to be in place is the material transfer agreement, because communities know where these plants are. They know how they interact with these plants, right? And then they will need to bring them, right, into the collaboration for research purposes. So that is the purpose of the material transfer agreement, as well as how the benefits are going to be shared by these partners in a collaboration, right? So as SANBIO, we facilitate that kind of discussion to take place, facilitate to ensure that there is a proper legal framework that is being taking place, ensuring that the indigenous communities who are perceived as vulnerable, their interest, their intellectual property are protected, and they are also recognized as part of the collaborators. So we don't promote competition, we promote collaboration, as Nikki has stated during her presentation. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to find out from Nikki or to you, Selekanye. So I think both of you can answer that. So I mean, like as now the world is racing to develop vaccine. Now, how do you anticipate, or what do you suggest should be a modality of collaboration, much as we're talking about collaboration and not competition? How can Indigenous knowledge be incorporated, or how can we foster collaboration to make sure that we can have a vaccine, if there could be a vaccine, or a treatment for pandemics, and in this case being COVID? Is there any way that you think there's been a marginalization in terms of being in the mainstream of participating in the clinical trials or vaccine development?
Okay, I'll take a shot at that. So there's been a limited space to actually know space where African medicine, traditional medicine, can be tested according to our own standards. Then again, let me highlight to this to be like within our own framework, our traditional health framework is that prevention is better than cure. At this moment in time, what we can do that now that we have been faced by the pandemic is that those that are not affected, how do we prevent them from getting affected or infected by the virus? For us to be able to then be able to keep those that are affected and be able to start our own clinical trials. There are other way on how we can be able to simultaneously come with the vaccine as much as the biomedicine will, is the fact that we do not have the access to the same patients that the biomedicine has got. So we will never be able to say, yes, indeed, this does work or this does not work effectively if the platform is not to be presented. There are plans that even previously have been done, like even the Artemisia itself. We have it. It's part of our lives. We call it Lingana in Setswana. It's even here in the yard. Is that even during the 1908 influenza period, it was heavily used to combat that pandemic of that era. So there is a platform for us to combat the two, only if we will be given the opportunity to access the same people who have suffered the same thing that we're trying to get a vaccine for.
Nikiwe?
I also think that our traditional healers or our herbalists, because in most cases they are the ones that think that they are sidelined or they are not included when it comes to medicine. I think what is important is for them to be educated. You know, workshops, we need like the institutions, like the ones for Sichaba. And we have research institutions like the CSIR, also to tell us department. I know they have a session there where they actually involve the traditional healer. But I think our country is not doing enough, because they should be running a lot of workshops and seminars to change the mindset of our traditional healers, because sometimes they think that if I come and I consult and they give me the medicine, maybe I can ask questions, how does this work? Will it actually help my chest pains or boost my immune system or something? Maybe they will think that maybe you are just going there to disrespect them, or because you're educated and all that, you know. But they also need to understand that within the plant, it's not the whole plant that actually will heal a certain disease, but it's the compounds within the plant that will actually attack a certain part in your body to get you healed. So I think more than anything, we need education, we need to change our mindset, so that also us as people that normally go to the pharmacies and buy medicine, we must know that the medicine is actually natural, but it has been produced in those industries, and it has more other chemicals than the herb itself. So that is where collaboration should come into. And like I was saying, that these people they are owning some of this knowledge because it's their gift. Some people are specially gifted to know and to dream about a certain plant that can heal a certain disease. And I think also scientists or people that think that they are scientists and they ignore a lot of the spiritual worldview should also understand that it's not everything that can be tested by science. Because sometimes people will question you when you say you have dreamt about this certain plant. It can cure a certain disease, and they would want to understand how is that possible. So I think as Africans, it is time to acknowledge that we are spiritual gifted, and it sometimes got nothing to do with the religion and all that. But we should acknowledge that people will understand a certain plant, how it works without even going to the lab and test it. But those people that are gifted should also be flexible enough to say, go to the lab. I will also want to learn this part of scientific test and understand it further and more. So I think if maybe we can have such, because even with this pandemic, any virus sometimes does not really kill. The virus itself is not killing, but it's the symptoms. Right now, COVID-19, you die from the shortness of breath. You die maybe from a weak immune system, from a throat ache, from coughing. And we have these plants that are sitting there, like the one that is just mentioned now, umhlonyane, which can help in one of these symptoms. But again, the research might show that umhlonyane cannot cure flu, but it can maybe assist you to clean your lungs. I'm just making an example. I'm not a researcher in that field, but maybe it can clean your lungs so that you can breathe easier. And then you'll need something else to boost the immune system. And sometimes you might find that a herb is there to boost the immune system, and then your body will fight the infection on its own. So these are the things that we need to understand also with traditional medicine. And these are the collaborations that the traditional healers need to do with the scientific research. Not to say science or scientific research is Western. No, it is actually part of us. It is cultural, social, like I've mentioned before. So people must not think that when you talk of science, you're talking about something modern or something that is not possible. We know that most of our laws in science and principles were not derived in the lab. People were just sitting and an apple fell down and no, there's a force of gravity. What is it that pulled this apple or made apple to fall down? So we know that those things are not derived from the lab. People just thought of these things and predicted things and then they tested them. So this is what we need to do also with traditional medicine.
Okay, thank you very much, Nikiwe. So there is a question from the attendees asking what role can IK play to alleviate the imminent economic crisis? Secondly, are there IK, and this is all to the panel members, are there any IK products currently in the pipeline to fight COVID-19, and where and when will they be commercialized? And I think if I may add there, do they really need to be commercialized, or if they are not commercialized, how can we enhance access to these products, given that some of the challenges is that the market might not, or the people that require these medicines may not be much to your disposal. And another question is, what is the view of the panel regarding the miracle Madagascar cure? Is it credible or is it a fly-by-night?
Okay, with the Madagascar cure, it is very much credible. Remember, if we were to always compare and contrast our medicine, our potential of our medicine with the Western one, we now losing it. It's like comparing apples with oranges. As much as we are part of the nature, the ecosystem of Africa, each ecosystem can heal itself. So we as the people are part of and parcel of the nature of Africa. So these plants are actually there to help us. The only thing that we should actually be scared of is the knowledge on how they are best used, because now having to lose that IKS knowledge on how they are mixed and when do they are best harvested and stuff like that. That's the things that actually we should be more worried of. But in terms of having to know if these things are working or not, we've passed that. I mean, we've survived so many other pandemics and they've been used before. The only matter of this thing is only how do we then repackage the whole thing to even meet the international standards of consumption, not necessarily that is it a fly by night or not.
Nikiwe?
Yes, what was the question again?
So the question was, is there any or are there any IK products currently in the pipeline to fight COVID-19? And when will they be commercialized? And also,
Okay,
is the Miracle Madagascar Cure a credible or fly by night product?
all right. I think I can congratulate Madagascar for actually making that trend. Even though we can ask a lot of questions like how much they have is in that booklet that they have right now. Because if we were going to use that without even saying it must be tested or people must drink and see the trials and all that, I think it will also raise a lot of questions. Because right now we are seeing that we don't know whether they have just taken ethics and politics and so on. So we don't know about how they have made it. Because like I'm saying, even with what we need to look at is what is inside the body, or what are the components of that medicine. So I think they must test it or trial it, because at the end of the day, if they don't, well, it's still going to have the same problems with other traditional medicines here in South Africa, where people will think that they can produce a certain medicine and sell it. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So Sichaba, are you able to respond to the commercialization question?
Any IK-based product in the pipeline to fight COVID-19. You see, before I became the SunBio program manager, I was the Indigenous Knowledge Systems at CSIR. So I used to work very closely with the traditional health practitioners and the local communities, right? So if you were to ask this question to them, they will tell you, yes, that is from their perspective, right? Because why? Before the advent of the pharmaceutical industry, local communities, indigenous communities, traditional health practitioners, they would know which plants to use to treat viral-related infections, like measles, for instance. It's a viral infection, right? And they will know which plants to use, right? And then I'm trying to say that if you ask this question from their perspective, they will answer you yes. However, now you're asking me as a researcher, right? That means I would say no, because COVID-19 is a new virus. No one understands how it works, the infection, right? And then which treatment regimes can we use to alleviate the virus? So from the IK perspective, so if we could identify those plans together with the traditional health practitioners, have a proper legal framework in place that will make the communities, traditional health practitioners to trust the researchers, and then subject those plans in research and development based on the traditional use. I promise you, we would find potential solutions that are based on indigenous knowledge.
You have gremlins attacking you there. Shaba, let me go to the next question because your sound is not so clear. So there is another question from Tabitha which asks, what forbids the Southern Africa to ask for assistance of medicinal knowledge and technology behind COVID organics from Madagascar? And why is it that it has to be approved by counterpart countries instead of being approved by standardization of the Africans?
Okay, can I respond to that?
Yes.
All right. I think
Oh,
there is. Hello.
I lost you a bit.
Yes, Tabby. So you had, I mean, Sachaba, there were some gremlins behind you there. So we lost you. But anyway, we have moved on to the question about what forbids the Southern Africa to ask for assistance of medicinal knowledge and technology used behind COVID organics from Madagascar. And why is it that it has to be approved by counterpart countries? And I suppose the counterpart countries is Europe or WHO, where it's based, instead of being approved by a standardization of the Africans. Nikiwe, are you taking that question?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. No, I don't think South Africa actually lacks these technologies, and we do have companies here in South Africa that actually produce medicine, and we are very much capable of doing what Madagascar have done. What I can say, I think the problem with us as South Africans or our government is we are dependent a lot, or maybe the department or the government benefits from the pharmaceutical industry. That is those westernized industries. An example will be on HIV. How many people have said they have tried, here's a cure for HIV, and we have even seen it here in KZN. Bayenza i-cure using idaha, you know, and there are so many herbs out there. There are so many people that have claimed to try it, but it's rejected here in South Africa. I mean, we are undermined. I don't know.
Can everybody hear Nikiwe?
No, I've lost her. I can't hear her.
No, can't hear her.
I think we can continue.
Sele, do you mind responding? Selekane.
Okay. Let me just continue to what Nikiwe was saying. With the mere fact that we are at a level where there's a compare and contrast, like I earlier said. we need to deviate from looking at that standard. Remember, at the end of the day, it's our health, and it's this health of our own families, and the communities that are initially marginalized to some extent. Like, for instance, I'm a startup company that looking at those medicinal plants and how we can best plant them to look at how do we respond to poverty issues in my village. A lot of people, especially old people, who are mostly left due to migration, employment migration, have this knowledge, and it's going to the grave with them, to be like, how do we best survive? Because we are far from medicinal facilities, for instance. How do we best then survive? We've been seeing a lot of unformalized economy of this traditional medicine. So the only thing that needs to happen is a matter of how do we then get to a level where we put even measurements to it, so that we are able to even help the environmental demand that the people will be doing according to the plans. So I believe that it's a matter of how do the important stakeholders, like the government and the communities, are willing to actually open up to these small companies who are willing to actually do the hard work and actually making sure that plantations of these plants that are needed to be tested in abundance, as climate change has been changing recently. So how do we make sure that we have a lot of those things, so that whenever we take them to labs and there's a back and forth space, we still have enough to actually counter-argue all these things that were done for centuries. We've only been given this space by the World Health Organization since the 1978, when there was a declaration to be like traditional health medicine only can be used if it has been checked for its own efficacy. So we need to move away from trying to look at the Europeans having to derive our own solutions. We are enlightened, we should derive our own solutions, and we need to speak to the end user themselves. It's like, does this medicine help you? We do not need to actually look at somebody who will be on the pharmaceutical side to be like, does this work? No, it has to be to someone who actually is using the same plant that will be prescribing to.
Very much. So I'm going to open up to the live questions. So I think our host on the platform is able to indicate who would like to ask a question. So I don't know if there's any live question that I think they.
Zugile, please go ahead.
Thank you.
Zugile.
Now I can, yes, I've just joined.
Okay, just hold on, Shaba. Zugile?
Can you please ask Zukile if she's able to unmute herself, because she said it's for the first time on the platform.
Yeah, we've unmuted, so we're just hoping. Zugile? Parisa, it's fine. I think let's proceed.
Okay, so there's another
question.
Okay, so there's another question in terms of, it's been announced on the news that if you're caught with Artemisia plant without any permit, you will be arrested. So the question is, where can the local communities or street vendors get the permits to sell their Artemisia? So I'm going to ask Sichaba to respond to that, and if there is any person, but then if you could just keep the response briefly.
Traditional healers, in terms of the Constitution of South Africa, are allowed to practice with their traditional medicine products. Unfortunately, in South Africa, we don't have the regulations. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. I was saying, in terms of the South African constitutions, traditional healers are permitted to practice with their traditional medicine products. Unfortunately, we don't have the regulations governing the mainstream use of African traditional medicines, like for instance, in hospitals, clinics, or at pharmacies. So that is the challenge, and that South Africa and other countries within the SADC are facing. That is why we cannot have this product at mainstream primary health care sector. So for me, is the issue of the regulatory approach towards the development of African traditional medicine, which is not there, which is lacking. From the South African context, we have the Traditional Health Practitioners Act, which seeks to institutionalize the traditional health practitioners, primary health care system. And then it further says that the African traditional medicines, they need to be investigated for their safety, quality, and efficacy. But that legislation has never been implemented in South Africa. However, the traditional health practitioners are continuing practicing, administering their products on people. And it is not only for healthcare, but it's also for cultural purposes.
Thank you very much, Sichab. So I'm going to ask this question, which was sent by Toto, and I think as well as I'll combine with the question from Diani. Is there currently a plan or strategy from SANBIO to work with traditional medicine practitioners? And how would they incorporate IPR? I take that's intellectual property rights, since some or most of their contents may be from general plants or a mixture of few traditional medicines. And the second question is the universal acceptance of African medicine, as in the case of the Madagascar treatment as well. What is in your opinion, should Africans respond to Western medicine processes of clinical trials? I think we've covered that a little bit, but I think what is of importance here is the plan or the strategy that can be advised from SANBIO, or how does SANBIO see the strategy play itself out as far as traditional medicines being incorporated?
Okay, all right, thank you. From SANBIO perspective, yes, we do have a plan, right? I've mentioned that we are a platform to promote networking, right? That network will also include the traditional health practitioners. So our plan is mainly through capacity building, right? To raise awareness of the legislations in the member countries that will have an impact on them. And then one of the global framework that we provide training on is on the Nagoya Protocol on access and benefit sharing, so that the traditional health practitioners would be aware of the requirements. Like for instance, if a researcher or a business approach a traditional health practitioner in connection with an idea to commercialize their product, it means a legal framework has to be in place before a traditional health practitioner could reveal their confidential information with respect to their product, meaning that there has to be a prior informed consent, material transfer agreement, and the most important agreement is a benefit sharing agreement, right? And then I was responsible for ensuring that this legal framework is in place, particularly in an organization such as CSIR. And CSIR is the leading institution in the SADC region in terms of benefiting with the traditional health practitioners based on the research that is informed by the indigenous knowledge. So the plan is through capacity building, education, and awareness raising regarding the legislations, policies, and the global frameworks governing the protection of indigenous knowledge. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sichaba. I'm going to ask Gogo Nomangungu to ask her question or his questions quite quickly before we could wrap up, and so I can give back to Tugela.
Okay.
Gogo, are you able to ask?
Sorry, she posted it. I can read it out.
Okay.
It says, do any of these organizations represented here have independent labs outside of the white minority capital Western farmer linked labs that are willing to connect and begin testing and clinical trials with young progressive mediums and scientists like ourselves? If yes, please provide details as to how can we reach you and begin impactful actual work of testing and numerous meds in our hearts, so-called labs. And Umhlonyane is just one plant out of the many that we use to create consortiums to fight such diseases as COVID.
Thank you, Chama. Did you manage to capture that?
Okay, if there are
You don't
any
need to respond now. Let me take 2 more questions and then you can respond. Is there any other person who would like to ask a question? Senzo, anybody who wants to go live?
Yes, there is. Let me just. We've got Nebagazi. Nebagazi. There's also Zukile.
Unmute here.
Hi, guys.
Yes, go ahead. We can hear you.
My input was on this one now, but it looks like we're all caught off guard with this COVID-19 thing. And then there's also this concern that people might be arrested for selling umhlonyane. For me, that is a bit concerning. But I think at the same, like currently, I'm not sure what is our take. I think currently to try to campaign for umhlonyane might have maybe some implications because there are already laws. They'll just pass a law that restrict the use of it. But can we maybe in the meantime, just as a short-term solution, encourage people to be using umhlonyane and all other herbs in order to treat the diseases that we know? For example, we know umhlonyane treats all kinds of flus. Instead of saying that it's a treatment for COVID-19, we say that it's a treatment for the flu, of which the flu symptoms are the one that are the reason for the corona. Like, so the corona only identified by seeing all those flu symptoms. Because now it looks like if people are selling this umhlonyane, as much as want to commercialize it, they might be arrested. So to save them, to say, continue to sell umhlonyane, but just change how you market it. Because at the end of the day, it's up to us to either buy umhlonyane or not. And I know if I have a flu, I'll use umhlonyane without having any issues. So it looks like now they just want to take ownership of the COVID-19 and then try to source a Western medicine or a discover to come from the Western countries for this, in order to treat this virus. So I mean that by treating these symptoms using umhlonyane, I don't think that can be that can be a sensitive matter to a point where they might even arrest you. And then another thing was, as much as you like the traditional herbs to be used and be commercialized, the concern I have on that as well is that should they be regulated? It might be even impossible for the traditional leaders now to even get access to them. Then, to some extent, now that umhlonyane will be taken away from them, and all other herbs will be taken away from them. Have we considered that risk? For example, if we're looking at the issue of dagga, it looks like as much as there is an opportunity for it to be legalized, but it looks like it's being taken away now by the big corporates, because now we see a lot of expos for the cannabis, of which they are not aware this cannabis is planted. Or, for example, we know the area under the Amampondo Traditional Authority. They are specialized.
Please keep your question. We're running out of time.
Sorry?
keep it quite very brief. We are left with 1 minute and we still have to get at least another question and then some response. So if you could wrap up.
No, it's fine then. It's fine. We can just continue with the one that was asked.
Okay. So, and then there's another question from Asanda, which with regards to Umhlonyane and the Madagascan herb, has it been established as to what characteristics of content or nature actually targets the area that needs therapy from ailments, e.g. maybe vitamins found? I think the colleagues, you can answer that. But also there's a question that relates to, should Africa Health Organization be established with the aim of exiting WHO and its laws and transcript our own health laws and set own benchmark usage of medicine receive support?
I think it's long overdue, Palesa, having to have our own body that will define the statute or the standard of our own green economy, meaning the botanical economy. Remember now we've had cases where, for instance, aloe, international companies come in here and harvest it here and live with it and go and process it, and then you consume the product, and only to find out that the same indigenous knowledge, they got it from someone, of which it was just a once-off interaction with that person, and then the intellectual property is long gone. So if we have such bodies that are able to protect such initiatives, I mean, a lot of people in marginalized communities that know these things very well can alleviate the poverty and actually uplift the economy of the whole region.
The next person who would like to take on a question, Mr. Chaba, would you like to respond?
All right. I'd like to respond.
Okay, Nikiwe is responding, so just hold on, Mr. Chaba.
Okay,
Mr. Chaba.
the first question.
Okay.
Mr. Chaba, can I allow Nikiwe to go on and then you come through?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. I would like to respond first. I think I've also responded to Noma Fuku to say that, yes. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go on.
Okay. I think I've responded to Noma Fuku to say, I think we do have innovation hubs where people go and maybe do their products. I think maybe Tukela might know of these organizations where people are actually assisted to do their innovations and make their products. I think with the workshops that I also attended with environmental affairs, they were actually allowing people to pitch their businesses and so on. But also with regard to Umhlonyane, Uzinkita, she's doing her research in the University of Victoria. She has actually done her research on Umhlonyane, and she will be submitting her thesis now in June. So I was hoping that she might be joining us as well today with this panel. I mean, with the discussion actually. But I think yes, we can have more of those people like Uzinkita that are already in the lab doing their research to actually do the test and extract those compounds, and also to answer to this question that is recently posted now on Umhlonyane. What is it that they have found on Umhlonyane, and the part that is actually the one that is healing some of the symptoms of flu? So we need, like we have mentioned before, a lot of collaboration, because we need to understand those things as well. And sorry, I think I just wanted to quickly answer. And with regard to the organization with perhaps also we have a lot of organizations. I think it will need also the collaboration from all the organizations for traditional healers, traditional health practitioners, And those people that are actually doing research and these organizations like the ones that we have today on our panel to actually come up and collaborate more so that we can establish our own organizations that can actually regulate or advise or develop these frameworks on how we can use our traditional medicine and commercialize it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sichaba. If you can go on quickly as well.
Okay, with regards to Mhlonyane and COVID, Mhlonyane is well known that it has anti-malarial properties, right? So with COVID, that hasn't been investigated, right? So unfortunately, within the pharmaceutical regulatory environment, whereby you put a claim on the product to say, Mhlonyane can treat COVID, that is required to be investigated and the product to be registered so that it can be widely accessible. I'm talking about if it can be accessible in the hospital environment. That hasn't been done. However, Madagascar believes that Mhlonyane works against COVID-19. That is based on traditional knowledge, right, of communities of Madagascar. So now, COVID is a very complicated virus. Now we need quick solutions. That is why Madagascar is saying, okay, here in Madagascar, our people are using it. But the WHO is saying, provide with a scientific evidence. Hence, Madagascar reached out to South Africa to provide that kind of scientific support to investigate the properties of Artemisia Mhlonyane against COVID-19. That is being dealt at the government level. That's all I can say. With regards to our own as African independent health-related body, that is a political issue. It's a political issue which I am not going to really express my views on. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the panel. I think if I can just wrap up some of the issues that I picked up as needing attention is that the institutions that are operating more as traditional medicines organizations or associations to ascertain knowledge dissemination or educating the people on use of traditional medicines, they need to come to the fore, and we need to highlight on that. And also, I think some of the issues that are really coming out strongly is that, as you know, I mean, we will talk about traditional medicines having to go through systems of validation and regulatory systems, but then eventually you would see them being on the shelves, being produced by particular companies and so on. So there needs to be clarity in terms of also us as consumers. How can we be allowed to access these products without really being strangled by the permit system, as we've had one of the comments that how do other people get permits to sell them? So I think this really still wants us to delve into and get to understand the context and the issues of regulatory and access from the consumer side, but also from the provider side of things. So if you would allow me, I would like to ask Tugela to take back the platform, and thank you very much for tuning into our webinar.
Oh, thank you so much, Palisa, and to all the panel members. This is quite an important topic, and unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I envisage a part 2 of this conversation. So yeah, we're still going to have a more in-depth discussion on this point. But I would like to then hand over to Refilwe to do the closing and also share something that she wants to share with us. Over to you, Refilwe.
Thank you, Triela. Yeah, I think we've had some very interesting discussions today and some very tough questions that we would like to take forward into the next discussions. This is definitely not the last time that we discuss this topic. We have all your email addresses, so we'll be sharing information, and all the questions that we couldn't take in the session, we will try and address them in a report that we will share with everyone else. I'd like to thank everyone for joining. I know it's after hours and some of you have families to take care of, so we really appreciate the time that you've allocated for the session. Yeah, so we wanted to just leave you with a small little thought. But before doing so, I would just like to state that Languni is not affiliated to any political party. We just govern ourselves. Like Triela said earlier, it's an organization of 3 ladies, yeah, not politically affiliated. We just want to share a short clip from one of the politicians, one of the prominent politicians in South Africa, who has a few thoughts on this particular topic. And we hope you enjoy it. So I will share my screen just now.
And thank you to all the participants for making time also to join. Thank you so much.
About traditional medicine. Traditional medicine, DP, it can be proven scientifically that these things can heal. How do you prove them scientifically? It is because these people healed each other before the arrival of Western medicine. Before the arrival of they've made us to be so scared of traditional medicine. And I want to challenge you, start bottling it nicely. Because the only thing we buy from these people is this fancy thing, so Red Bull and the 2 per day. That's the only thing we buy. Let's do our thing, bottle it nicely, put measurements, drink like this, like that, and start selling. And we must start putting on the shelves. Yes, you know. You need Panado? Yes, Panado. But if you need Mahona Jot, even option, you must not be told why. The only thing that heals headache is Panado. Let there be an African alternative and let's choose which one we want. These people are saying they gave birth, they helped each other give birth in their own houses. They are
Refilwe, I think the sound is not coming through. Refilwe?
Yes, I'm back.
Thanks.
So yeah, I hope everyone heard that. It's just a thought that we would like to leave everyone with. Once again, thank you so much to everyone for joining us. If you have any comments to share, please do let us know. You can just drop us an email on info@languni.org.za. And yeah, thank you for the questions. Thank you for engaging. And we look forward to engaging with you further in future webinars. So yeah, thank you and goodbye. Goodbye. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Don't forget to rate.